following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 14th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Occasional rain and drizzle today, a high of 40. Periods of snow tonight, accumulating 1 to 2 inches, low of 12. For Thursday, low of 12. 1 to 3 inches of snow tomorrow. Storm total snowfall 2 to 4 inches, a high of 17 and a low of 15. For Friday, not as cold with a snow shower, a high of 30, low of 27. Saturday, cloudy with snow showers, a high of 33, low of 20. Sunday, a little snow in the afternoon, a high of 23, a low of 14. For Monday, cloudy with a little snow, high of 22, low of 12. And for Tuesday, a bit of morning snow, a high of 14, a low of 6. Sunrise was at 7:44 a.m. and sunset tonight is at 5:05 p.m. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Our opening story. Affordability is focus of Hochul's address. Election year speech targets Republicans. Albany. In her annual State of the State address Tuesday, Governor Kathy Hochul said she wants to expand affordable child care, state requirements for insurers, and the size of Niagara Falls State Park. In a 47-minute address delivered from a stage in Albany's Empire State Plaza, Hochul's video-assisted presentation began with the Syracuse University Marching Band and ended with images of Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen from Sunday's playoff victory over Jacksonville. Hochul donned a Bills cap as the team's fight song, Shout, blared from the stage. In between those moments, Hochul focused on her signature issues as she faces re-election this year, affordability. And in doing so, the Buffalo-born Democrat aimed the blame squarely at Republicans at the federal level. I need to level with you. This moment carries real threats from Donald Trump and his enablers in Congress, Hochul told the crowd, which included Democrats and Republicans. Driving up costs on everything from groceries to farm equipment through these reckless tariffs, killing major infrastructure projects that put union members to work, tearing nursing immigrant mothers from their babies and calling it public safety. And just last week, the world watched as an immigration operation in Minneapolis that never should have happened left a child without a mother and a community, and indeed a nation, shattered. It's all part of an agenda that only makes our lives harder. The speech drew a crowd that included Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan, former Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, now President and CEO of Western Regional Off-Track Betting, former Buffalo Mayor Anthony Mazziello, now a lobbyist, J. Conrad Seneca, President of the Seneca Nation of Indians, Village of Fredonia Mayor Michael J. Ferguson, and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. The governor struck a real optimistic note, said Ryan, a former state senator attending the speech for the first time as Buffalo mayor. We know we have national problems, but we can solve some of those problems working here in New York State under the governor's leadership. Senate Minority Leader Robert Ortt, a Republican Tonawanda, said in a statement that the governor's speech put a large emphasis on political buzzwords. However, it failed to mention the current affordability crisis and deterioration of safety of our community as a direct result of years of bad policies coming from Democrats in Albany, Ortt said. Unless we are putting money back into the pockets of New Yorkers, we are not delivering affordability. Unless we stop prioritizing the rights of criminals, we are not delivering public safety. We need more than Band-Aid solutions. We need to truly address the underlying factors that have led us to where we are today. Hochul faces a Democratic primary from Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado and Republican opposition from Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman. Both criticized the speech. Delgado said Hochul was only willing to offer half measures in a moment that demands bold leadership, Blakeman said. If speeches fixed problems, New York would be thriving instead of families are struggling and businesses are leaving. Amid several references to Western New York, Hochul mentioned that her parents had lived in a trailer outside Buffalo and that as a young mother she could not afford child care. Hochul promised to invest in comments to expand affordable child care to nearly 100,000 more children through pre-kindergarten programs, she said, across the state. New Yorkers face child care costs that can average $20,000 a year per family, which means families need to earn upward of $285,000 to afford child care under federal affordability guidelines, according to a book of information released by the governor outlining the objectives in her speech. Hochul promised that by 2028, the state would have universal pre-K for every 4-year-old in New York. Under her plan, the state would create a uniform pre-K grant to be funded at either $10,000 or the amount of the school district's current aid per pupil, the book said. Focusing on surging insurance costs, the governor called to require home and auto insurers to notify their customers whenever rates go up and explain why. Auto insurers with more than 2 consecutive years of outsized profit margins will be required to lower their rates or submit justification to the state's Department of Financial Services. Hochul identified fraud as a factor in surging auto insurance premiums, which she said are the highest in the nation. She said she would advance a bill to increase the 30-day time limit that insurers now have to investigate and report instances of fraud. The governor also wants to cap the insurance payout on non-economic damages for drivers who are engaging in crimes such as driving while intoxicated or felonious behavior. In Western New York, Hochul called to expand the footprint of the Niagara Falls State Park to include the nearby Whirlpool and Devil's Hole State Parks. She said the realignment would add 2 miles to the trails of the park and connect visitors to attractions such as the Aquarium of Niagara Falls and Underground Railroad Heritage Center. Together, these improvements will improve the experience of millions of visitors, promote longer tourism stays in the area, while increasing tourism spending and showcase the nearby assets and attractions of the local communities, she said. The governor, citing the recent shooting in Minneapolis of Renee Nicole Good, 37, the mother of a 6-year-old child, by a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer, said she would allow individual litigants to sue federal officials who violate New York constitutional rights. When boundaries are crossed, accountability matters, Hochul said to a raucous applause. No one from the president on down is above the law. Let me repeat, no one. Hochul also proposed a state law to ensure that civil immigration enforcement is blocked from sensitive locations, such as schools, hospitals, and houses of worship, to help provide stability for children and families in essential community spaces. Hochul also wants to establish buffer zones outside houses of worship and healthcare facilities to keep New Yorkers from facing intimidation and hate-fueled demonstrations. Among other proposals, Hochul called for plans to crack down on 3D printed guns and ghost guns, increased accountability of utility company executives, and increased online protections for children. Addressing the high cost of pharmaceuticals by asking the state's Department of Health to find specific classes of high-cost drugs. The DOH would then plan to directly negotiate with the drug manufacturers to get better discounts for the state. New funding opportunities to help municipalities identify and replace lead service lines impacting drinking water in schools. The effort would allow the replacement of filters in schools to be reimbursable through the state's Department of Environmental Conservation. Allocating $250 million in new capital funding to accelerate the developments of affordable housing the current fiscal year, with the goal to produce thousands of more affordable homes. A bill to allow the state to work with Canadian provinces during emergencies so the state can formally access and provide assistance such as personnel, equipment, and specialized capabilities. A bill requiring courts to automatically extend orders of protection against defendants who fail to appear in court. A loophole at present allows them to run the clock out, according to the book.
Thank you, Larry. Governor's power plan urges more nuclear. Governor Kathy Hochul wants the state to take an even bigger step into additional nuclear power. Hochul is now targeting adding 5 gigawatts of nuclear capacity, 5 times more than the 1 additional gigawatt she announced plans for last year. There's more nuclear power that's more nuclear power than's been built anywhere in the United States in the last 30 years, Hochul said in her State of the State address Tuesday. Let's do it. So many communities are begging for this upstate. Hochul wants to create a nuclear reliability backbone that would increase the state's nuclear generating capacity to a total of 8.4 gigawatts, including 3.3 gigawatts already in service. This effort will provide firm, clean power that complements renewable energy resources and reduces reliance on fossil fuel generation, the governor's office said in a summary. By creating a stable foundation of always-on energy, the backbone will allow renewable resources to operate more efficiently and flexibly. Together, these actions will support a resilient, flexible, and zero-emission grid that meets New York's growing energy needs. Nuclear power currently accounts for about 20% of the state's electricity, according to the New York Independent System Operator, which oversees the state's power grid. But Hochul wants nuclear power to play a more substantial role in the state's energy future amid growing demand for electricity, which is expected to rise by 50% to 90% over the next 2 decades, driven by data centers, large-scale manufacturing plants, and electric vehicles. Last June, she set into motion plans for the state to add at least 1 gigawatt of nuclear power capacity. She directed the New York Power Authority to oversee development of at least one new generating facility somewhere in upstate New York. The Power Authority last year solicited potential host communities to host a nuclear facility, drawing responses from 8 interested locations. The only one in western New York was Dunkirk. 2 of the other communities that responded to the solicitation were Oswego and Wayne counties, which are home to the state's active nuclear power facilities along Lake Ontario. NYPA issued a separate solicitation for developers interested in participating in a nuclear project and received 23 responses. The state's power grid is facing increased demand for electricity. While the state has emphasized increasing its reliance on renewables, such as wind and solar, those resources outputs fluctuates depending on the weather condition. And when the state is embracing greater use of nuclear power, it is still expected to take years for those projects to come to fruition. The state is calling for construction of the new upstate nuclear facility to begin by 2033. Hochul and other advocates for nuclear power said it is emissions-free, in keeping with the state's decarbonization goals, and very reliable, generating large amounts of power that can be counted on 24 hours a day. Critics, however, say adding nuclear power is the wrong direction to go. The Public Power New York Coalition called Hochul's expanded plan for nuclear power disastrous. Hochul's energy plan is an anti-affordability plan that will send already unaffordable utility bills skyrocketing, said Alex Patterson, campaign coordinator for Public Power NY. Last September, about 150 environmental groups signed a letter to the governor opposing new nuclear facilities in the state. They cited 3 key objections. Nuclear power plants take too long to be built to make an impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It is much more expensive than renewable energy sources and is neither clean nor safe. The push for more nuclear power figures into a larger debate about how the state can maintain a reliable grid in the face of rising demand for electricity. Fossil fuel generating capacity in the state has been deactivated at almost twice the rate that renewable energy capacity has come online, according to the NYISO. Hochul's initial plan for adding 1 gigawatt of nuclear generating capacity would meet only a fraction of the expected increase in demand. For example, a data center proposed for a business park in Genesee County would consume an estimated 500 megawatts of power, about half of the generating capacity that would be added under Hochul's initial proposal. And manufacturing facilities such as Micron Technologies Complex, planned for near Syracuse, will have massive needs for electricity. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Devil's Hole Whirlpool to join Falls State Park. The disparity is immense. Niagara Falls State Park welcomes about 9 million visitors each year, while the Aquarium in Niagara, just outside the park's northern boundary, attracts a little over 200,000 annually. In other words, tours narrowly focus on Niagara Falls' main attractions, such as mesmerizing views from Goat Island, lively rides on Maid of the Mist, and adrenaline-inducing ventures through the Cave of the Winds, which often dot tour groups' itineraries. That could soon change. Governor Kathy Hochul, in her State of the State booklet released Tuesday, shared plans to bring Whirlpool and Devil's Hole state parks under the larger umbrella of Niagara Falls State Park. Her intention is to create a seamless corridor of breathtaking overlooks, historic sites, and world-class hiking opportunities, the booklet said. The governor said the purpose of the change is to promote longer tourism stays, increase spending, and connect visitors to attractions such as the aquarium and the Underground Railroad Heritage Center, which sits about halfway between Niagara Falls State Park and Whirlpool State Park. The expanded footprint will add about 2 miles of hiking trails to the park, Hochul said. While the park effort is part of her agenda for 2026, Hochul did not specifically mention the plans for her in her State of the State speech, which centered on affordability, access to child care and pre-kindergarten, and greater transparency regarding insurance hikes. The 3 state parks are roughly in a 5-mile vertical line along the eastern shore of the Niagara River. Niagara Falls State Park is at the bottom, where the river makes a sharp turn. Whirlpool State Park is about 2.5 miles north, and then Devil's Hole is roughly 1.5 miles northeast of Whirlpool. The latter 2 parks are highlighted by stunning views of the Niagara Gorge from above, as well as stairs to the river level that showcase the immense power of the rapids. Chad Pfeiffer, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Aquarium of Niagara Falls, said Tuesday afternoon that he was engaged in the state's discussions over the last year. He believes it will benefit the aquarium. There's always been a big conversation. How do we drive more of that 9 million people a year north to experience more and more of what we have to offer along the gorge, Pfeiffer said. Expansion of the Niagara Falls State Park would eventually mean infrastructure changes, Pfeiffer said, including an extension of the path of the Niagara Falls Scenic Trolley beyond its current northernmost stop, the aquarium's Great Lakes 360 exhibit. Once the trolley runs even further out and people can catch the trolley right there at the falls and make it further down to Devil's Hole or to Whirlpool, Pfeiffer said, I think we'll see a lot more of that traffic connecting to those farther parts of the experience. It's important that the areas surrounding Devil's Hole and Whirlpool State Park are able to accommodate an influx of visitors too, Pfeiffer said. Maybe what we'll see is for the first few years, they're only coming a mile or two farther, and then every few years we'll see that footprint expanding. I know that's what we hope to see, but state parks are also going to have to invest in the transportation and amenities to make sure when even more people are coming to those areas and they're able to support them.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:18. Today in history, on this date, in 1784, the United States ratified the Treaty of Paris, ending the Revolutionary War. Britain followed suit in April. In 1858, Napoleon III survived an assassination attempt by an Italian revolutionary and accomplices who threw explosives at the emperor's carriage as he and wife Eugene headed to the opera in Paris. Though bystanders were killed, the emperor and empress were unharmed, and the revolutionary was swiftly captured and later executed. In 1943, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and French General Charles de Gaulle opened a wartime conference in Casablanca, Morocco. In 1952, NBC's Today Show premiered with Dave Garroway as host. In 1963, Democrat George C. Wallace was sworn in as governor of Alabama with the pledge, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. It was a view he later repudiated. In 1967, the Summer of Love officially began with a human be-in involving tens of thousands of young people at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. And in 1970, Diana Ross and the Supremes performed their last concert together at the Frontier Hotel in Las Vegas. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial, Pressing pause. Buffalo Public Schools wise to reconsider school closures. Many stakeholders concerned about Buffalo Public Schools service to its constituencies breathed a deep sigh of relief last week when it was announced that no schools would close, at least not yet. The district's troubling financial situation is not going away, and officials have acknowledged that schools will have to close, just not now while officials take a breather. It is the correct decision. The pause on school closures for the 26-27 school year means that School 90 and School 3, both recommended by a 12-person committee, receive a welcome reprieve. The district will find other ways this year to make up the $2.5 million that would have been saved from closing the schools, and officials will, in the future, hire a professional management consultant to handle school closures. It's a good idea to recruit those with expertise in the matter. Still, credit is due to School Closure Committee that worked tirelessly and probably thanklessly on such an enormous task. However, when it comes to school closure, it's always personal, as many members of the community conveyed while as expressing displeasure at the possibility of closing either or both of these two schools. There were loud public outcries over the potential closure of both schools, one a bilingual school on the Lower West Side and the other a smaller early childhood center on the East Side. It speaks volumes of the recently appointed Superintendent Pascal Mubunga and Board President Kathy Evans Brown, in a joint statement, chose not to close either school. It had to be crystal clear to these leaders that the process needed reworking. The potential closure of School 3 in particular caught many by surprise. Harper Bishop, one of the two closure committee members who argued politicking affected the group's recommendation, expressed relief that the school would remain open. Not everyone was pleased with the closures being avoided. Ed Speitel, a leader of Buffalo Schools Parents Congress, is also a member of the closure committee, said he was disappointed but not surprised at the outcome. The district's decision to allow all schools to remain open demonstrates a willingness to listen and respond to the community. However, district leaders understand that delaying the process, as the superintendent indicated, to allow the 4 newly elected board members to settle in and allow time to consider the future use of closed school buildings, does not permanently put off the inevitable. According to a district statement, part of the regular budget process, the superintendent will instead present the board with an alternative plan to address the financial challenges in the 26-27 school year. A school working session presentation offered the realistic observation that the district will never achieve a balanced budget without school closings and facilities consolidations, and will eventually run out of fund balance. Mubunga said he would quite often engage new Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan, adding that the school district, if forced to close buildings, does not want to abandon them. That approach is hopeful, fully engaging the community in decision-making and ensuring an open, transparent, and fair process is always best practice. This brief and unsuccessful foray into targeted school closures makes one thing clear. In future, the district must take a thoughtful, measured approach to such decisions, leave no stakeholders behind.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. And it shows a picture of the Lady Justice. She's blindfolded, holds a sword in one hand and scales in the other hand, but walking away with a huge axe over his shoulder is President Trump. And he has a mask on his face, and he is dressed in an ICE outfit. And what he has done is he is walking away from Lady Justice. He has taken that huge axe and he has cleaved right through her left arm so that the scales are on the ground. And the support that she stands on, instead of saying justice, it says just on the one half and ice on the other half. And as President Trump is walking away, he says, "She failed to comply." The second cartoon is by Gary Varvel of Creator Syndicate. And if you remember the old vaudeville days when they had live shows, and if they didn't like something, a shepherd's crook, someone with a shepherd's crook would come out and just haul the comedian or the performer off stage. Well, here's a picture of the Shah, I believe it's Iran, and he's on his throne, shall we say. It's a few steps up. He's seated in a chair. And here come two shepherd's crook out from the side behind the curtains. And one is labeled Iranian, and the other one is labeled People. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. Fans will always carry the Ralph in hearts. You were never just concrete and steel to me. You were home before I ever understood what the word meant. My grandparents lived across the street from you, close enough that your roar drifted through open windows on fall Sundays. My father grew up there, his life shaped by your shadow, your lights, your seasons. Long before I ever took my own steps through your gates, you were already stitched into my family's story. My first concert was inside your walls was Michael Jackson in 1984. I didn't fully understand the magnitude of what I was witnessing, but I felt it. Then came 1989, the first time I saw Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead. There were countless other nights after that. Metallica, Shaking Your Bones, Guns N' Roses in full chaos, Elton John, Billy Joel, and the Rolling Stones proving that legends don't fade, they echo. You even transformed for hockey, hosting history during the first Winter Classic. Watching the Sabres play inside you was surreal. Cold air, breath visible, hearts warm. It was Buffalo at its purest. And of course football, so much football. Attending Bills games throughout the mid-'80s and into the present day, living through heartbreak, hope, snow, triumph, and loyalty. You taught us resilience. You taught us how to believe, even when belief hurt. Then came January 4th, one last game against the New York Jets. One final walk through your corridors, one last look back at the field. You weren't just a stadium, you were family history. I will carry you with me, always. This from Nick Pickowitz of Buffalo.
Thank you, Larry. Spahn deserves a statue in Buffalo. Isn't it time that a statue of Warren Spahn replace that of Jimmy Griffin at the entrance to Salem Field? Spahn is without question the greatest professional athlete Buffalo has ever produced. He was winningest left-handed pitcher ever with 363 career wins. Plus he could hit with a respectable .194 batting average and 35 home runs. Find a nice spot for Jimmy down in the Old First Ward, maybe in Father Conway Park, and give Spanny his due. Simply naming a park road in Cazenovia Park is just not enough. Come on, Buffalo. I will personally make the first donation towards a Warren Spahn statue. This is written by Brendan Quinn of Buffalo. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump's team breaking laws and lying about it. We are living in an absurdist nightmare. The January 7th ICE killing of Renee Nicole Good in Minneapolis, the Venezuela attack, and the new White House January 6th webpage claiming the insurrection was a Democratic fabrication. These each convey a powerful and unsettling message from Trump, Miller, and their crew. Violence is ours to use at home and abroad to get what we want, as David Corn wrote in Mother Jones. With absolutely no proof of in just hours after the fatal shooting of Good at the hands of an ICE agent, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accused Good of being a domestic terrorist. Also, with no proof, Vice President Vance claimed Good was a victim of left-wing ideology and had intentionally sought to ram the officer with her SUV. The videos of Good killing do not prove self-defense, and the videos and witness testimony of the January 6, 2021 insurrection do not support the claim of a Democratic fabrication. Trump's responses, "Don't trust your own eyes," echo those in 1984 by George Orwell. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. Trump promised during the 2024 election campaign to go after the worst of the worst by deporting criminals and sex offenders. The massive ICE raids taking place all over the country are also targeting people who have legal status to be in the U.S. and are on a path to citizenship. The administration is doing nothing to make our communities safe. This from Nancy Kresge of Orchard Park.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:29. Some opinion columns. This is Another Voice, and it's about the environment. And it's written by Diane Kruzak, who is on the executive committee of the Sierra Club Niagara Group. The title is Proposed Stamp Data Center Needs State Review. The Sierra Club Atlantic chapter joins the Tonawanda Seneca Nation and the editorial board of the Buffalo News, this was January 4th, in calling on the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation as lead agency for the SCQRA review of the massive data center proposed for STAMP in Genesee County. The Genesee County Economic Development Center is an untrustworthy environmental evaluator. The facility proposed by U.S. Stream Data Centers is 2.2 million square feet with 3 computer-filled buildings supported by 500 megawatts of power, noisy diesel backup generators, and air chillers, and 120,000 gallons of stored diesel fuel covering 90 acres. The plans include piping 20,000 gallons of potable water daily from municipal sources in Genesee County and potentially Monroe County, discharging the same as wastewater daily into a significant Orleans County waterway, utilizing 500 megawatts of electricity, and burning tens of thousands of gallons of diesel fuel, undermining the state's legal obligation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions under the CLCPA. STAMP is adjacent to the nation and the Iroquois National Wildlife Refuge in an environmentally sensitive and rich ecosystem. The data center would destroy this pristine environment as well as undermine DEC's implementation of New York's 30 by 30 policy to protect environmentally sensitive land. Unlike the GCEDC, the state's DEC has the skilled staff and technical knowledge necessary to understand the environmental impact of data centers and possibly developing a much-needed statewide policy. Allocating 500 megawatts of electricity to Stream would impact rates and availability throughout the state. It's a fifth of the capacity of the Niagara Falls hydropower plant. Approving a project demanding that much power with the likely potential for raising utility rates and undermining our state's electrical grid should not be left to an individual development agency in Genesee County. Last year, absent a new environmental impact study, GCEDC approved Stream's proposed 900,000 square foot data center after a few days' review, even though salient environmental elements of the proposal were still conceptual. The state's DEC is better suited to act as lead agency and should do so. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The following is my view, and it is written by Larry Behan. And I, again, have to repeat, this is not me. This is Dr. Larry Behan, and he is another person. Funeral planning is a sad necessity. I never liked funerals and have always avoided them. But at 95, it was apparent that there was one I could not avoid, my own. Thinking it would be easier for all concerned if I arranged it in advance, I made an appointment with a funeral director, which sounds strangely similar to a wedding planner. I picked his establishment because it was one of the few with a joke for a name. Am I Gone? He was polite, formal, and, well, stiff. There were more details to a funeral than you can imagine. Certificates, gravesite, cemetery, services at the home and the grave, a cleric, obituary music, casket, concrete case for the casket, pallbearers, thank you cards, cards with my picture, and a Lord help us prayer. That is the short list. And then there is the cost. It costs a bundle to die, and I was paying for it. I like the idea of a wooden casket for my final resting place. I opted for plywood with a nice cherry finish. There was also a choice of concrete boxes to enclose the coffin and protect the grave from collapse. I got one that doesn't seal and saves considerably. I have not been very attentive to religion in the last 60 years. I consider myself Catholic, but have not scrupulously followed the rules. I might have to make amends there somehow, not only to get past the pearly gates, but to get into the cemetery and possibly have a priest say a few non-sarcastic words. It was important to pick an Am I Gone location near the cemetery to shorten the trip of the cortege. Certain days are busier than others, and the cemetery has a schedule. Did we want a limousine? Of course you need a hearse. How about flowers? Then there was the obituary. I could write the darn thing myself, but an obituary is supposed to make you look good, and how could I get away with that? On the other hand, I hate to have them leave out anything. I compromised and just gave the director the facts. I had always hoped to go first, but suddenly my companion of 72 years, my other half, my cherished wife, Lynn, lost her magnificent and terrible battle with Alzheimer's. She tripped, broke a hip, and quickly slipped away. I was alone and desolate. But there are things to do when someone close to you dies. There is the funeral, of course. I had just filed the pre-planning for my own. I called Amagon and plugged my plan in for Lynn. Both my sons and Lynn's brother came this time. We went back over the plan and filled it with concrete details. We picked the minister who had compassionately conducted my mother-in-law's service. We set a date for a Saturday when our friends and relatives would be free. We tried to arrange a reception at the Buffalo Yacht Club, where we spent many years racing sailboats. They were booked, so we set the affair at the Grand Island Lodge Club. Lynn would have loved their brownies. What music? A song from A Sound of Music, one of Lynn's favorites, came into my head. My day in the hills has come to an end, I know. It was Lynn, and it overwhelmed me. At the funeral, I knelt alongside Lynn to say, "So long, honey, I love you." She was frowning, I thought. Could she be mad at me? No, she just never liked funerals much either.
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Bargain grocer Aldi is expanding. The discount grocery chain Aldi is expanding rapidly and plans to open more than 180 U.S. stores this year as more Americans skip nights out at restaurants and cook at home due to anxiety over the nation's economy. The chain, with U.S. operations based outside of Chicago, went on an expansive tear soon after inflation began to spike in 2021 and opened a record number of new stores last year. Food inflation has slowed, but it was still up 2.4% last year, according to U.S. data, and has soared about 25% since the pandemic. On Tuesday, the U.S. Labor Department said that grocery prices jumped 0.7% in December from the previous month, and that price hikes accelerated faster in 2025 than they had in the previous 2 years. Aldi has sought to snap up market share as more families trade down, meaning they are changing where they shop to cut costs. Americans are dropping trusted name brands for cheaper store brands and swapping out the places they've shopped for years in favor of discount or thrift stores. It's been a boon for national bargain store chains like Dollar Tree and Dollar General. The shift has begun before President Trump's trade war began, but appears to have accelerated over the past year. Aldi said in 2024 that it planned to open 800 new stores by 2028 as inflation worries spread. It announced plans to open a record 225 locations last year in the U.S. Aldi said Tuesday that it will add new distribution centers in Florida, Arizona, and Colorado, and is still committed to investing $9 million in the U.S. through 2028. The company is also looking to open more than 50 stores in Colorado within the next 5 years and plans to double its Las Vegas store count by 2030. The expansion will give Aldi almost 2,800 stores by the end of the year, which gets it closer to its goal of 3,200 stores by 2028. Traditional grocers are under pressure from bargain chains, massive retailers like Walmart, and also relatively new players like Amazon.com. In December, Amazon did same-day perishable grocery delivery, had been expanded to more than 2,300 cities and towns, and the online giant said it has more expansion plans for this year. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Inflation is cooling, but still above Fed's target. Washington. Inflation cooled a bit last month as prices for gas and used cars fell, a sign that stubbornly elevated cost pressures are slowly easing. Consumer prices rose 0.3% in December from the prior month. The Labor Department said Tuesday, the same as in November. Excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core prices rose 0.2%. also matching November's figure. Increases at that pace over time would bring inflation closer to the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. Many economists had expected inflation to jump last month as the government resumed normal data collection after the 6-week shutdown last fall. So the modest increases that matched the November figures came as a relief. The price of manufactured goods was flat in December, a sign that the impact of tariffs may be starting to fade. Distortions caused by the government shutdown have made the inflation data harder to interpret. But the recent run of figures suggests inflation has peaked. Michael Pierce, chief U.S. economist at Expert Economists, wrote in his note to clients, "Signs that inflation is cooling could make it more likely that the Federal Reserve will reduce its key interest rate later this year, which could translate into lower borrowing costs for mortgages, auto loans, and credit cards. Even so, the large price increases in recent years for necessities such as groceries, rent, and utilities have left many Americans' households feeling squeezed, turning affordability issues into high-profile political concerns. Food prices have jumped about 25% since the pandemic. President Trump, stung by last year's election results that suggested voters are souring on his handling of the economy, has responded with an array of initiatives intended to address rising costs, including a proposed ban on Wall Street firms buying homes, a 10% cap on credit card interest rates, and the suspension of many tariffs on imported goods such as coffee, pasta, and furniture. Still, grocery prices jumped 0.7% in December from the previous month, a sign food costs remain elevated. Compared with a year ago, food prices have risen 2.4%. Tuesday's figures showed a bigger increase than in the 2024 or 2023. Trump celebrated Tuesday's figures on social media. "Great, low inflation numbers for the USA," he posted. He also celebrated estimates that the economy expanded at a solid pace in last year's fourth quarter. "Thank you, Master Tariff." Yet in a speech Monday, John Williams, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and a key member of the Fed's rate-setting committee, said the tariffs have likely increased inflation by about a half percentage point. Tariffs aside, underlying inflation trends have been pretty favorable, and we're seeing no signs of broader inflationary pressures, Williams said. He expects inflation will peak in the first half of this year before declining toward 2% in 2027. Tuesday's report in the first clear measure of inflation since September. The 6-week government shutdown last fall suspended the collection of price data used to compile the inflation rate, and the government didn't issue a report in October, and November's figures were partially distorted by the impact of the closure. Most prices in November were collected in the second half of the month after the government reopened, when holiday discounts kicked in, which may have biased November's lower inflation. And since rental prices weren't fully collected in November, the agency that prepares the inflation report used placeholder estimates in November that may have biased prices lower, economists said.
Thank you, Larry. Bankers slam call to cap credit card interest rates. U.S. banks and financial institutions are pushing back against President Trump's proposed cap on credit card interest rates, citing new data that showed it could result in millions of American households and small businesses losing access to credit. Trump, who is under pressure to address voter concerns over the cost of living, on Friday called for a 1-year cap on credit card interest rates at 10% starting on January 20th. He did not provide details on how such a ban would be imposed, and some industry experts said it would require congressional action. After being largely blindsided by the move, financial groups quickly scrambled to rebut the proposal on Monday. The Electronics Payment Coalition, which represents financial institutions and payment card networks, said that nearly every credit card account associated with a credit score below 740, which is 82% to 88% of open credit card accounts, would be closed or severely restricted under a 10% cap. A one-size-fits-all government price cap may sound appealing, but it won't help Americans. It would do the exact opposite, harming families, limiting opportunity, and weakening our economy, said EPC Executive Chairman Richard Hunt. While subprime borrowers would be hardest hit, a cap would lead to higher annual fees for most borrowers and reductions in credit card rewards and more monthly account charges, lenders argued. Some also warned a cap would slow consumer spending and weaken the economy. Credit cards are a cornerstone of U.S. consumer finance, giving households flexible access to credit, but often at hefty rates. For banks and card issuers, those high rates and associated fees are a major source of profit. According to data from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, in 2024, average APRs hit their highest level since 2015, with most but not all of the increase due to rising prime rate, 25.2% for general purpose cards, at 31.3% for private label cards. The share of cardholders making only the minimum payment in 2024 was also the highest level since 2015, the data found. The cap would likely prompt a severe pullback in lending because it would make credit cards unprofitable, industry sources said. President Trump's statement was mostly a call to action and did not contain any policy or legislative announcements, wrote Morningstar analyst Michael Miller. We think a cap is unlikely to be implemented, but if enacted, it would have dire consequences for credit card profitability. Many credit card portfolios carry credit costs that are too high to be supported under a 10% limit. Other research has shown that credit card interest rate caps could save consumers money. A study from Vanderbilt Policy Accelerator, a research center at Vanderbilt University, published in September, found that a 10% cap would save Americans $100 billion annually, although such a cap would also result in some reduction to credit card rewards for borrowers with credit cards of 760 or lower. We often hear these complaints that this would cause banks to close people's credit card accounts. What we found is that the profit margins are absolutely massive, said Brian Shearer, Director of Competition and Regulatory Policy at the Vanderbilt Policy Accelerator. There really is some fat to cut. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Business Briefly, Alliant Air agrees to buy Sun Country Airlines, Las Vegas. Allegiant Air said it will acquire Sun Country Airlines in a cash and stock deal valued at about $1.5 billion, including debt, in a move combining two low-cost U.S. carriers focused on leisure travel. Executives at both carriers said their route networks complement each other and that the larger airline would increase affordable travel options for passengers. The merged airline will serve about 175 cities with more than 650 routes and a fleet of roughly 195 aircraft, the companies told investigators.
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Ashelman, Gary. Bauer, Russell, Russ. Themis, Alice M. Bona, Katrina T. Pat, Ne Guttarajara. Breen, Hillary J. Cleary, John M. Jr. DeMarco, Margaret A. Groger, Gregory F. Koenig, Richard E. Levea, Ellen M. Ne Krasmark. Lewandowski, Joyce E. Ne Crutchfield. Mago, Ne Joyce, Patricia. Pitts, Warren C. Skip. Shaw, Susan M. Ne Devine. Walters, Dorothy J. Ne Ingersoll. Yeager, Pamela. Zelasco, Lorraine A. Ne Niddle. And some national and international obituaries. Scott Adams, whose popular comic strip Dilbert captured the frustration of beleaguered white-collar cubicle workers and satirized the ridiculousness of modern office culture until he was abruptly dropped from syndication in 2023 for racist remarks, has died. He was 68. Adams revealed in 2025 that he had prostate cancer that has spread to his bones. David Webb, one of Hong Kong's most vocal shareholder activists who advocated for greater corporate transparency and investor rights for decades, has died at 60. David Webb, MEB, passed away peacefully in Hong Kong on Tuesday, January 13, 2026, from metastatic prostate cancer. If you need further information on any of these names, please give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars, happy birthday. For Wednesday, January 14, 2026, you are determined and self-disciplined. You are also self-indulgent and charming. This is a year of learning and teaching. Take time to renew your spiritual or religious beliefs. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. Be careful that you don't bite off more than you can chew today in your enthusiasm to impress bosses, parents, or authority figures. You will be tempted. Tonight, you are admired. Taurus, 3 stars. You might focus on whether you have the funds or you will get the funds for future travel plans that seem exciting. Tonight, travel appeals. Gemini, 3 stars. Be careful when discussing financing or your assets today. You might overestimate something or promise something that you might later regret. Tonight, good fortune. Cancer, 3 stars. If necessary, you're ready to work and help someone else today, which is admirable. When talking to spouses and partners, be careful you don't promise too much. Tonight, promising romance. Leo, 4 stars. This is a playful day. Make an effort to socialize or get out and have a little fun. It's true that you're keen to work and get better organized, especially because help from another source will help make this possible. Tonight, friendly vibes. Virgo, 3 stars. Relax at home today if you can. You've had lots of opportunities to enjoy sports, social outings, and activities with kids, which means today might be your chance for a breather. Tonight, fun and romance. Libra, 4 stars. You have big plans for your home or your family, and these might be doable because hard work will bring about the means for you to attain your goals. Tonight, entertain. Scorpios, 3 stars. You're thinking about money and cash flow today, which might lead you to making a promise that you will later regret. Oops. Tonight, contentment. Sagittarius, 4 stars. Things will tend to go your way today because the moon is in your sign. Admittedly, it hypes your emotions, but it also tilts the world in your favor. Tonight, you're strong. Capricorn, 4 stars. You're empowered with so many planets in your sign. Today, Mercury in Capricorn is opposite Jupiter, which boosts your enthusiasm. Tonight, charming diplomacy. Aquarius, 4 stars. A confidential discussion with a friend might be important for you today. You might want to share some joyful news or something upbeat. Tonight, relax. Pisces, 3 stars. You're high vis today, which means people notice you more than usual. This is a popular and possibly romantic day for you. Tonight, socialize with others.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Reader sounds off on recreational travel. Dear Heloise, I asked you to remind readers of the environmental harms of tourism travel so that they might consider traveling less. You printed this letter in the Buffalo News, and in your response, you placed most of the blame on global warming and air pollution from fossil fuel companies rather than on tourism, implying that changing travelers' behaviors is unimportant. Well, certainly these companies bear the greater blame because, for decades, they misinformed citizens about the harms of their products, as tobacco producers argued against linking their products to respiratory diseases. However, the well-being of future generations depends on all humanity, that is, everyone living in harmony with Earth. Anti-smoking campaigns rightfully call not only for adjustments to business practices from tobacco producers, but also for smokers to stop smoking. Similarly, caring for the planet requires corporations and the public to exercise their environmental responsibility. We consumers decide how much and what we consume. Those of us who are privileged to have money available for the pursuit of pleasure can choose environmentally friendly habits. That's from Andrew H. And Heloise's response, Andrew, This column provides hints for readers to help make their work and personal lives a little easier. However, I try never to tell anyone how to live their lives. As for tourism, I think with the cost of living getting higher every day, fewer people will be traveling in 2026. And there is more hope on the horizon. The birth rate in many countries is declining, which means fewer consumers. More people are looking at how they live and spend their income. More of us are recycling, are using solar and wind energy, and have decided that keeping up with the Joneses is a waste of our time and money. Yes, there is still waste, and some people will always need to have the latest gadgets or fashion trends. But more and more people are becoming aware of the impact each of us has on this planet. More people have come to realize that designer clothes and fancy cars are nice, but don't bring peace of mind, a healthy body, or lasting joy to our lives. I do agree with you on one thing. Earth is our home, and it's time we cleaned house. That was Heloise. And one more, spare bulbs. Dear Heloise, for years I just put the spare bulbs that came with a new strand of Christmas lights into a small coffee can. This kept all the replacement bulbs all together, but it's not always easy to find the correct replacement bulb when needed. I now use a small prescription bottle with a secure locking cap, and I drill a hole through the center of the cap, then push a tie wrap through this to secure this bottle to the cord of lights. Only one hole is required. I feed the tie wrap through the hole from the inside of the cap around the light cord and back through the same hole, securing the tie wrap inside. I trim off excess length. The tie wrap locking mechanism should be larger than the hole. Then I add bulbs to the lid to the bottle and close the lid. Now when a replacement bulb needs to be installed, I have one right on hand, and there's no sorting for the correct size or color. This is from DS. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Justices likely to side with bans. Conservative majority indicates court in favor of state restrictions. Washington, the Supreme Court seemed likely Tuesday to uphold state laws prohibiting transgender girls and women from playing on school athletic teams. Lower courts ruled for the transgender athletes in Idaho and West Virginia who challenged the state bans, but the conservative-dominated Supreme Court gave no indication after more than 3 hours of arguments that it would follow suit. Instead, at least 5 of the 6 conservatives on the 9-member court indicated they would rule that the laws don't violate either the Constitution or the landmark Title IX law, which prohibits discrimination in education and has produced dramatic growth in girls and women's sports. Addition is expected by early summer. In the past year, the justices ruled in favor state bans on gender-affirming care for transgender use and allowed restrictions on transgender people to be enforced. The legal fight is playing out amid a broad effort by President Donald Trump to target transgender Americans, beginning on the first day of his second term and including the ouster of transgender people from the military and declaring that gender is immutable and determined at birth.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 14th on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beano.
On to some local and regional news. Buffalo Biodiesel has lawsuit tossed. The lawsuit filed by 27 businesses against Buffalo Biodiesel in Erie County Supreme Court was dismissed after the judge found the allegations bare bones and not specific enough to sustain any claims. The businesses had sued the Tonawanda-based company in August, claiming Buffalo Biodiesel had signed restaurants up for service contracts to collect their used cooking oil for conversion to biofuel, and then failed to collect the oil. After the restaurants ran out of room to store their old oil and allowed another vendor to remove it, the companies allege Buffalo Biodiesel sued them for breach of contract. Buffalo Biodiesel employs 150 people and operates a facility in Tonawanda that processes used cooking oil for use in fuels. It collects used cooking oil from about 26,000 restaurants across 15 states. Despite the judge's dismissal last week, Buffalo Biodiesel's local legal woes may not yet be over. Michael Colasano, the attorney who represented the 27 businesses, said he has been retained by 49 additional companies that allege Buffalo Biodiesel's contracts were fraudulent or misleading. He said he plans to appeal the judge's decision as well as file additional lawsuits for the other businesses. The court's decision only affects 27 clients, and we will be moving to re-argue it, perhaps with new information, Colasano told the Buffalo News in an emailed statement. We intend to proceed with all of these lawsuits. Buffalo Biodiesel did not provide a comment when requested by the News. The lawsuit's dismissal comes as Buffalo Biodiesel continues to iron out its solid waste management facility permit with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The company had been told last summer by the DEC it may have needed to shut down if it didn't submit a valid permit application for its Tonawanda facility. It had operated for at least 5 years without a valid permit, according to DEC documents. The company received an extension from DEC on its deadline to submit permit application documents. It has until January 31st to send the agency the documents, according to a DEC spokesperson. Meanwhile, in October, Buffalo Biodiesel announced it had secured $300 million in funds to help expand its business and was undergoing another $1 million in upgrades to its Tonawanda facility. The Erie County Supreme Court lawsuit alleged Buffalo Biodiesel often fails to provide basic service, answer calls for pickup, refuses to remove unwanted containers, and other allegations. When businesses are allegedly found to be in breach of their contract, Biodiesel sues them, according to the lawsuit. Judge Michael Siragusa noted in his decision that the claims in the lawsuit were unspecific and based almost entirely upon information and belief without a scintilla of reference. As a result, the lawsuit was completely dismissed. In 2016, a New York Attorney General said Buffalo Biodiesel used the local court system to bully and intimidate small businesses across New York. The Attorney General had found the company filed more than 600 lawsuits in Buffalo City Court between 2013 and 2015. The Attorney General and Buffalo Biodiesel in 2016 reached an agreement to drop the cases and return any money it may have collected. In November, Darling Ingredients Incorporated, a Texas-based company that similarly repurposes used cooking oil, sued Buffalo Biodiesel, alleging that the company had stolen Darling's cooking oil tanks from customers and therefore forced customers to use Buffalo Biodiesel services instead, according to court documents. The pending lawsuit mentions 90 Darling customers in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana that had allegedly canceled their contracts with Darling and entered into contracts with Buffalo Biodiesel. And in January 2025, Buffalo Biodiesel sued Massachusetts-based Life Cycle Renewables for allegedly stealing used cooking oil from Buffalo Biodiesel's containers at businesses. Life Cycle denied those allegations and filed counterclaims, alleging Buffalo Biodiesel had secured new customers through fraud and deceit, and that targets mom-and-pop shops that don't have the means to fight back against biodiesel's tactics, court documents said. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Man accused of harboring alien after stop at border. A dual citizen with a law practice in Israel faces legal problems of his own after U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers found a man hiding under luggage in his rented SUV at the Rainbow Bridge. Israel Endon, 46, was traveling from Toronto to New York City when an officer sent him to secondary inspection at 1:15 a.m. Thursday at the Niagara Falls border crossing. Endon could not produce a rental agreement after giving what the officer thought was an inconsistent story, according to court records. Another officer who lifted the hatch of the Ford Expedition took out a piece of luggage and noticed a person's back. Other officers were called over to the vehicle and found Elazar Wigdorowicz, 33, lying under the remaining luggage. Wigdorowicz has a significant criminal history, including pending charges in Israel. "I didn't know he was in the car," Endon told a Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent afterward, according to a court document. But it would be unreasonable to believe Endon was unaware of another person inside the vehicle, Special Agent Matthew Mastorelli said in an affidavit. Endon was charged with bringing in and harboring an alien, with Wigdorowicz charged with attempting to elude examination or inspection by U.S. immigration officers. Wigdorowicz told the Homeland Security agent that he hid in the back of an SUV because he wanted to visit his rabbi's grave in the United States, but his visa had expired. He obtained the visa in 2024 due to his criminal history in Israel, according to court records. It was revoked in 2017, according to court records. Wigdorowicz said he did not pay to be smuggled into the United States, but he would not say whether Endon knew he was in the SUV. Wigdorowicz told the agent he did not think it was a crime to sneak into the country. "But I was in the trunk because I knew they would not let me in without a visa." Endon told authorities he flew into Toronto from Warsaw, Poland, and was planning on visiting family and clients in New York City. He said a friend had rented the vehicle for him to drive to the United States. Endon said that while he was seated in the driver's seat, the friend, Wigdorowicz, and others loaded the SUV with luggage. Endon said Wigdorowicz was on the same flight from Poland to Toronto but did not sit together. Both men remain in custody. U.S. Magistrate Judge Michael J. Romer on Tuesday denied Endon's request for release with conditions, saying his frequent travel and access to cash and assets make him a flight risk. Endon was born in the United States but has lived in Israel for 25 years. His wife and 3 children live in Israel, where Endon has a thriving law practice and a home valued at $700,000, according to Assistant U.S. Attorney Brendan W. Fitzgerald, who argued against his release. Endon faces a serious felony with significant consequences, Fitzgerald told the judge. The crime carries a maximum imprisonment term of 5 years. But given Endon's lack of criminal history, sentencing guidelines would suggest not more than 6 months if he is convicted. Assistant Federal Public Defender James E.B. Bobsine said, "The crime is about as insignificant as possible in federal court," said Bobsine, who requested Endon's release with an ankle bracelet after posting a bond. Endon thought arrangements made by his family in Israel would have a place to live near the Chabad Knesset Center in North Buffalo and connect with an instant community here, Bobsine told the judge. "Isn't it serious he was trying to sneak somebody into the country who has a substantial criminal record?" Reimer asked. Wigdorowicz was convicted in 2018 of conspiracy to commit a felony, assault, extortion, threats of false imprisonment, and malicious damage to a vehicle. There is a pending case from 2022 for conspiracy to defraud, forgery with intent, use of a forged document, fabricating evidence, and obstruction of justice. Earlier this month, he tried gaining approval for the U.S. visa waiver program to enter the country, but he was denied.
Thank you, Larry. Two short articles here. Ryan must negotiate 8 union contracts. Mayor Sean Ryan has long touted his labor bona fides and received many union endorsements in his successful run to City Hall. Now, with his administration taking over at the beginning of the year, a tall task awaits. New contracts for all the 8 union negotiating units that represent city workers while trying to deliver on his promise of a balanced budget in the face of potentially sizable structural deficits and no cash reserves to help bridge the gap. Of the 8 contracts, 4, including those for the large bargaining units in the police and fire departments, have expired. The other 4 expire at the end of June. Mariah White, Ryan's deputy mayor in charge of labor relations, recognized that the many union contracts the administration will need to negotiate out of the gate represents a significant challenge. But she said it's also an opportunity. It's an exciting opportunity to show our workforce how valuable they are and to really partner with the union on ensuring that we have an energized, motivated workforce that's prepared to deliver quality services for the residents of our community, Weiss said. Weiss said the contracts were a top priority in the Ryan administration, but she also noted that city workers continue to enjoy the protections of their contracts even after they expire. And data of some abuse victims is exposed in breach at law firm. Data on fewer than 20 clients with lawsuits against the Buffalo Catholic Diocese was exposed in a cyber attack in September that affected a law firm representing more than 1,000 child sex abuse victims in New York State. The law firm, Jeff Anderson and Associates, based in Minneapolis, notified clients in December about a cybersecurity event in which an unauthorized party gained access to the firm's computer system and copied some data. The breach was determined to be the result of a large-scale attack on firewall protection technology that affected thousands of businesses, the firm said in a letter to clients. Michael Finnegan, an attorney with Jeff Anderson and Associates, said the law firm was not specifically targeted. The firm was using SonicWall's cloud backup service when firewall protection was attacked September 17th. SonicWall said an investigation found that unauthorized state-sponsored threat actor accessed firewall configuration backup files for all customers who use the company's cloud backup service. Jeff Anderson and Associates notified clients of the security incident in a letter dated December 19th. Fewer than 20 clients with cases against the Buffalo Diocese had information exposed. The letter said the firm implemented additional safeguards to help prevent a similar event in the future and notified law enforcement. Dates of birth and medical information were the only data potentially impacted, Finnegan said. The identification of victims was not exposed. The law firm does not maintain any bank or financial records for clients, and any settlement funds would be issued in the form of a check, he said. As an added precaution, however, the letter said the firm will offer complimentary credit monitoring services for 24 months through Experian. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Ambitious $53 million renovation set to begin at Falls Memorial. Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center is about to start on a multi-year $53 million list of projects that will provide needed upgrades to the safety net hospital operations. Construction will start within 30 days on 4 projects totaling $6.5 million in the main hospital building. This phase will include a new wound center hyperbaric center in partnership with national firm Restorix Health, a new vascular center and vascular lab in partnership with the University of Buffalo's Vascular Surgery Division, new surgical office suites and exam rooms, and new private medical office suites for 2 physician specialists. Other projects anticipated to roll out in 2026 and 2027 include a new 430-car attached parking garage, a new 12-bed ICU step-down unit, an overhaul of the medical surgical floor, a renovation of the women's pavilion, installation of a new telemetry system for inpatient beds and the emergency department, a new emergency generator system, and upgrades to equipment and furnishings. This ambitious program reflects NFMMC's vision for the future of healthcare in Niagara and our dedication to providing state-of-the-art facilities for patients, families, and staff, Niagara Falls Memorial President and CEO Joseph A. Ruffolo said. Ruffolo who has led Niagara Falls Memorial since 2002, told the Buffalo News that the upcoming projects will accommodate present and future healthcare needs in Niagara County, which has roughly 212,000 residents and welcomes millions of tourists every year. He pointed out that Niagara Falls Memorial is the only full-service hospital in Niagara County after Catholic Health shifted labor, delivery, and surgical services from Mount St. Mary's Hospital in Lewiston to other Catholic Health sites. While Catholic Health has invested to add outpatient and specialty services to its Lewiston and Lockport hospitals, the independent Niagara Falls Memorial is now the only hospital in Niagara County delivering babies. That is why it is important, Ruffolo said, for Niagara Falls Memorial to upgrade all its labor and delivery units as part of the Women's Pavilion renovation. If we didn't have labor and delivery and the ability to provide emergency C-sections, there would be no more babies born in Niagara County, he said. So it's a very important project, not only for present but future demand. How is this being funded? More than half of the $53 million needed for the project is being funded by a $28.4 million state grant Niagara Falls Memorial landed last year. That grant, through the statewide Healthcare Facility Transformation Program, was the largest single grant awarded among 55 projects statewide that received funding in August. In addition, the hospital landed a $10 million grant or gift from billionaire Tom Golisano as part of a larger announcement of donations in 2024. Also, Ruffolo said the hospital is getting $6 million in state dormitory authority financing. That all adds up to about $44 million, meaning Niagara Falls Memorial still has about $9 million it needs to raise to complete all the projects. Ruffolo said the $9 million gap is earmarked to go toward the parking garage, which is the only construction project on the list that is not yet fully funded. Ruffolo said the new parking garage is expected to cost $27 million and is expected to take 12 to 18 months to build once work begins. We are hopeful that we can close the gap somehow, some way, soon, said Ruffolo, noting that the hospital has other grant applications filed with the State Health Department. If the hospital can get enough money to fully fund the parking garage, the plan calls for building a garage attached to the hospital off Walnut Avenue. Once a new garage is done, Ruffolo said the current garage on 10th Street would be torn down to make way for a roughly 100-car surface lot. Ruffolo expects the full list of $53 million worth of projects to be completed over the next 30 months. What does this mean for the hospital? Ruffolo said the construction and renovation should help Niagara Falls Memorial to really be financially sustainable going out in the future, as the various projects are geared toward meeting community needs. For instance, the new vascular center and lab is geared toward addressing Niagara County having one of the highest rates of vascular disease in the state. And the planned step-down unit from the intensive care unit should help meet demand as Niagara County's population gets older and requires more critical care. In the future, Ruffolo said Niagara Falls Memorial plans to stay the course as an independent nonprofit health system that partners with other area health providers to bring specialized services to the city. We have a lot of partnerships, and I think that bodes well with respect to Niagara Falls kind of staying like Switzerland, being neutral, Ruffolo said. That helps our ability to partner with various systems to provide the very best care here in Niagara Falls, Ruffolo said. And Niagara Falls Memorial also has new additional horsepower through recent executive hirings. The hospital recently appointed Perry Sham, formerly of Nassau Healthcare Corp., as its chief financial officer, and it hired Susan Brooks as its executive vice president and chief nursing officer. Brooks was most recently vice president of patient care services at Mount St. Mary's Hospital.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:19. On to sports. Sports shorts. Two of them. Bandits acquire McCannell in trade with Wings. The three-time defending NLL champion Buffalo Bandits acquired transition player Mike McCannell from the Philadelphia Wings on Monday for a third-round pick in the 2028 entry draft. The 6'1", 190-pound McNeil was selected 5th overall by the San Diego Seals in the 2021 draft. In 35 career games with the Seals and Wings, the Orangeville, Ontario native has 5 goals, 11 assists, and 116 loose ball recoveries. The Bandits, 3-2, returned to the KeyBank Center on Friday to face the Ottawa Black Bears, 3-3, with a face-off set for 7:30 p.m. And Venus Williams falls early in the Aussie tune-up. Venus Williams lost 6-4, 6-3 to Tehana Maria in the first round at the Hobart International on Tuesday, less than a week before her appearance at the Australian Open. Williams, 45, received a wild card entry for the first Grand Slam event of the year. She also had a wild card to play in Hobart, where she lost to 6-seeded Maria in a match lasting almost 90 minutes. Williams also lost her first-round match at Auckland, New Zealand last week, and the Australian Open begins on Sunday. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Squandering a shot. Sabres failed to log vital points in division loss to Panthers. But improved Sabres enjoy the love and learn some valuable lessons. There was a lot of love for the Sabres around KeyBank Center on Monday, and it should continue all week. The draft is coming in June. Gary Bettman was in the house for that announcement and further opened his bag of tricks to release the nugget that an outdoor game is likely coming in 2028 to the new Highmark Stadium. Said the commish, "I have to go for a tour, which I will do, but we're coming for an outdoor game in the new stadium. Just a question of when." I asked Bateman multiple times at Stanley Cup Finals and again at October season opener how concerned he was about the Sabres' playoff drought, which was now stretched to an all-time record 14 years. So it was only fair to ask him Monday what his thoughts were about the team's torrid play last month. He was ready to shower deserved praise. Owner Terry Pagula was as frustrated as any fan would be because he's first and foremost a fan, Bettman said. But it's nice to see the club on the run that it's on, where they've won 13 out of 14. It's great to see, and it's great for the fans most importantly. As commissioner, I want all the teams to win every game and be successful. That's not possible, but it's great to see what's happening in Buffalo from a sports standpoint for the fans, the Sabres and the Bills as well. That's a good buzz here for sports right now. Some of that buzz got silenced with a 4-3 loss to the Florida Panthers in a 50-50 game where the two-time defending Cup champions got a power play goal and better goaltending in a game that was up for grabs at 2-2 through 2 periods. It was a hard game, said Coach Lindy Ruff. When the urgency gets up, you're going to see a lot of that. Not a lot of ice. You got to make the other team pay for the mistakes they make. The Sabres couldn't do that Monday. Maybe they can do more of it Wednesday when more love will undoubtedly get spread their way during a nationally televised game at the Philadelphia Flyers. With the Philadelphia Flyers, TNT analyst Paul Bissonnette is scheduled to be in the house and working his first career game in the Rob Ray seat between the benches. Note to Biz, you're retired. No trash talking. No getting in the scrums, no matter how tempting it may be. And the Love Fest should continue Thursday with the 2006 Sabres alums in the house for a showdown with Montreal. Just before the second period Monday, there was another drum banging like we see every night prior to the game, with the crowd saluting Deanne Hawkins and Tre'Davious White of the Bills doing the honors from a suite. White, you may recall, was famously the director of the Trey White Goalie Academy from a Sabres social media skit a few years ago. The crowd roared. As a father and grandfather, I love all my children, a smiling Bettman joked of his 32 teams. It's great to see the fans engaged. It's great to see a team that's been through a rebuilding process have success. If you ask fans in other cities, they could care less what happens here. But I look at all of it, and I think it's great to see this team playing the way it's capable of. Panthers coach Paul Maurice, who has won the last 2 Stanley Cups, had plenty of praise for the Sabres as well to the game. Prior to the game, what happens when you get hot? Any team in the NHL to get that confidence in their game, everything happens faster for them. Maurice said the puck moves quicker, their reaction time is right on. They're feeling good, and they come to the rink full of hope and excitement. The Sabres couldn't find a lot of open ice in this one. They had only 23 shots on goal and missed on 20 other attempts, while 14 more were blocked. The game has looked simple for them of late. The Panthers complicated things Monday. When the game's going right, you see less time and events of chaos in your game, and then the game is actually easier to read, Maurice said of the Sabres. You get more repetitions in the right way that you're playing, and you have less video as a coach that you got to fix. The repetition of good things and then the reinforcement of good things become easier. This was a game that was far from easy. Goalie Colton Ellis said it was a learning experience and ruled giving up A.J. Greer's unscreened snapshot late in the first period. Zach Benson, who got some time on the top line with Tage Thompson and Josh Doan, quickly rewarded the Sabres with a tying goal with 2:03 left in the second. But Benson admitted the Sabres struggled in the face of the Panthers' wall play, and the Champs were harder on pucks all night. It's a hard game, and it's a good lesson, Benson said. They compete and work and play their system to a T. We got away from our game a little bit too much. The Sabres haven't strayed much lately. The fans were again into the game. The praise is pretty universal. This is a rugged week, with 3 more home games in 4 days. It's on to the next. The next 3 months will be like this.
Thank you, Larry. Bills notes, decision leading to Allen's late TD made quickly. There wasn't a ton of time to discuss the next play, but the Buffalo Bills coaching staff made a big decision quickly in Sunday's 27-24 win over the Jaguars in Jacksonville, Florida. After an apparent 11-yard touchdown run by quarterback Josh Allen was ruled a 10-yard run, the Bills faced first and goal with 1:05 left. Buffalo offensive coordinator Joe Brady went through the pros and cons of going for a touchdown right away. Head coach Sean McDermott wanted to bleed a little more time off the clock, but eventually McDermott, like Brady, realized there was too much risk in taking a knee. And I think the discussions are always warranted, Brady said Monday, and there's a lot of variables that you can go about it. But I think we ultimately ended on the right decision. And there's a lot of times you say that it's always results-oriented, right? The Bills did score on a 1-yard run by Allen to give them a 3-point lead with about a minute to go. Brady was an advocate of going for it, thinking of quarterback sneaks that did not go his way in the past. But I think it's hard to score touchdowns in this league, Brady said. Like we saw what happened last year on some of our QB sneaks and cost us the opportunity to go to the Super Bowl, right? So let's not get cute. Let's go for the touchdown. Brady on interviews. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport has reported that the Baltimore Ravens have requested permission to interview Brady for their head coaching job. But Brady, who interviewed for head coaching positions during the playoffs last year, said he doesn't feel he needs to compartmentalize the week, since his only priority is coaching the Bills. You don't really have to, right? Brady said, I don't have to do anything until after this game. So there won't be any focus on anything else besides the Denver Broncos, our guides, and doing everything that we can to get an opportunity to do it again next week. That's all I ever care about. The rest of that stuff will take care of itself. Babbage on Oliver. McDermott said Monday that Bills defensive tackle Ed Oliver will return to practice this week. Oliver was placed on injured reserve in October with a biceps injury, and during his rehab he had a procedure done on his knee in December. With that in mind, defensive coordinator Bobby Babbage doesn't want to get overexcited about Oliver quite yet. We'll see. I mean, we got to see where he's at and these types of things, Babbage said. And Ed's certainly a talented player. He's had some time off, so we just got to see where he's at. Oliver had been very present at the Bills facility during his rehab. You guys have seen it. He can't stay away. He's showing up at individual and all that. Then he's on the side doing just little things and mimicking drills and all those. So that's Ed's a ball guy. Ed loves ball. Ed wants to play football. The way he practiced shows you that he loves football, so we'll see where he's at. Receiver depth takes a hit. The Buffalo Bills' depth problems at wide receiver took another blow on Tuesday. Bills head coach Sean McDermott announced that wide receiver Terrell Shavers tore his ACL in Sunday's win against the Jacksonville Jaguars and is out for the season. Shaver has injured his knee in the first half, and he returned to play 21 snaps on what the team later learned was a torn ACL. He embodies what we're all about, McDermott said. Remarkable toughness, remarkable commitment to the team. With Gabe Davis also tearing his ACL in Sunday's game, and with Joshua Palmer placed on injured reserve ahead of the game, the Bills now have 3 healthy wide receivers on their active roster: Khalil Shakir, Keenan Coleman, and Brendan Cooks. Cooks joined the team 7 weeks ago. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel knee had his 21-day practice window opened this week, but McDermott said it's still too early to know if he'll be able to play this Saturday against the Denver Broncos. McDermott indicated Tuesday that the Bills would not be adding other players to the wide receiver room and instead set to roll with the group they have. Another guy's got to step up, McDermott said. That's point blank what it means, and I don't mean to be short. It's just right now it's full confidence in the guys in that room, and we brought back Christian Wilkerson. He'll be a good addition back to us on the practice squad, and we'll go from there. And the injury report. Ahead of practice, McDermott provided other injury updates. Safety Jordan Poyer, hamstring. Cornerback Max Hairston, ankle. And running back Ty Johnson, ankle, will not practice Tuesday, McDermott said. Additionally, kicker Matt Prater, right quad, will not practice Tuesday, but he is slated to kick Wednesday following the pattern he took last week. Quarterback Josh Allen, right foot. Tight end Dalton Kincaid, knee. Linebacker Terrell Bernard, calf. Defensive end A.J. Epinesa, unspecified. Linebacker Matt Milano, unspecified. And defensive end Greg Rousseau, unspecified, were going to be limited in the walkthrough. Safety Damar Hamlin, pectoral, who remains on injured reserve, was set to be a full participant on Tuesday. In addition to Samuel, defensive tackle Ed Oliver, biceps/knee, was going to participate Tuesday as his 21-day practice window has been opened. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. It's time to optimize. Sabres, Bergevin, good pieces in place, but work needs to be done. Mark Bergevin saw what so many others have seen about the Buffalo Sabres. The franchise has the players and pieces for success, but success in the form of wins and playoff contention has been elusive for the last 14-plus years. It was difficult for Bergevin, a longtime NHL front office staffer and former general manager, to discern the continuing status quo for the Sabres. He wasn't alone in that assessment either. You could ask anybody around the league, Bergevin said. It's always, and I hate to bring it back, why have they made the playoffs? Why haven't they made the playoffs? They have good players, and there's a reason why. To find out why, Bergevin had to be on the inside. That's one of the reasons they brought me here, to give me my view of where the team's at and where it needs to be. Bergevin, 60, played in the NHL from '84 to 2004 and has extensive experience in coaching, scouting, and player personnel. He was general manager of the Montreal Canadiens from 2012 to 21. The Canadiens reached the playoffs 6 times in that span, including the Stanley Cup final in a COVID-19 shortened 2021 season. Here's 3 takeaways from Bergevin's first meeting with local reporters. 1. High but realistic standards. Kelkalainen set a lofty goal for the Sabres at his introductory press conference December 16th, build a championship team and contend for the Stanley Cup. Bergevin took a measured approach. It's been a while since they've been in the playoffs, Bergevin said. The core, they have some good assets, and the ultimate goal is obviously winning the Stanley Cup. Experience factor. Bergevin's work in scouting, front office, and as a general manager has given him plenty of perspective and experience when it comes to evaluating players. You have to be upfront, Bergevin said. You have to trust your instinct, and you need to be patient, especially with young players. But at some point, nobody knows your players more than the people in place. That's what I've learned over the 3 years. Information is key. Bergevin was succinct when asked what his goals are in his new role with the Sabres. Bring the best information based on my experience. Scouting edition. Stacey Rose, the former assistant general manager of the Tampa Bay Lightning, will join the Sabres as a scout. Injury report. Sabres defenseman Matthias Samuelsson was a full participant Tuesday, less than 18 hours after he tripped over teammate Tage Thompson. I'm good, Samuelsson confirmed during a quick locker room check-in. Defenseman Bowen Byram and centers Josh Dunn did not practice Tuesday. Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said Byram was absent for personal reasons. He'll be up and going tomorrow, Ruff said, and Dunn, he was being evaluated for a middle body injury.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 10:34. On to Asking Eric. Stepmom waffles on difficult stepson's inheritance. Dear Eric, my husband and I have been married 31 years. We each have 2 children of our own. They're all grown. His boys have different mothers. I raised one and helped with the younger one. As soon as the younger one became an adult, the problems began. Around holidays, he starts picking fights, stirring trouble, spreading rumors, then refuses to show up for family events. This has been going on for years. Now I have inherited some land from my father, who the youngest refused to associate with. My husband has made it clear he thinks I should split my inherited land equally between the 4 children. I disagree. I firmly believe that if you want to be treated like family, you should act like family. My father didn't deserve this boy's scorn. Why does this boy deserve my father's land? Am I wrong? From Land Division. Dear Land, as it's your inheritance, it's yours to do with as you please. So it might be helpful for you to think about what you want to accomplish by passing it on to your children and potentially your husband's sons. If the greater goal is to keep family peace, then sure, split it equally. If, however, you want to use the land gift as a way to honor the relationship with your father and the relationships you have, then it makes sense to give according to the relationships. If the relationship with one son is contentious or even non-existent, there's no reason he should inherit anything. Make your decision and stand by it. But also, you might ask your husband what he's thinking. Ask him to explain his stance to you and find out what he'd want to accomplish with an equal split. What are his priorities, and are there other ways for him to achieve what he's trying to achieve? Excuse me. It may well be that he's trying to fix things with his son, a noble desire, but one for which inheritance is often ill-suited. You two don't need to debate or argue, but communicating more clearly about the choice in front of you and its implications can help the two of you avoid conflict. Dear Eric, over the last few years, my husband and I have noticed a trend when dining out with others. Often we have stated in advance that it's our treat, and that we are surprised when more than half of the meal ordered by our friend or family member is boxed up to take home. Last night took the cake when treating our dear couple of friends to his birthday dinner at a very nice restaurant. His wife barely touched her entree before having it boxed to take home. This outing was planned 3 weeks in advance, so surely she could have planned in advance to be hungry, or have simply ordered what she was able to eat while with us. I do acknowledge that many people have developed eating and hoarding habits that they may not realize borders on impoliteness when dining with others, and then having their meal boxed, sometimes while others are still eating, instead of simply ordering what they can consume. Certainly it does irk us more when we're picking up the tab. How do we not feel insulted, or is this a trend that we must learn to accept? We enjoy occasional dining and treating others as a form of kindness. From Boxed in a Corner. Dear Boxed, try to focus on the company, not the food. The objective of treating friends to a meal is to spend time with them, to talk, to connect. Yes, the meal is important, with plenty of people choose to socialize at restaurants for the express purpose of enjoying good food. But it sounds like you're enjoying the hospitality of inviting friends out and showing them a good time. I understand why others not finishing their meals might throw a wrench in your desired hospitality, but it's not like they're throwing the food away. They'll get to enjoy it later, which, if you think about it, means that your hospitality extends far beyond the meal. Reading between the lines, it seems that maybe you feel your friends are taking advantage of you. If this is the case, try to remember that everyone's eating habits are different, and they're probably not thinking about you when they have their food boxed up. It's unlikely that your friends are waiting for a dinner invitation in hopes of getting half a steak and styrofoam to take home. Perhaps their appetites have shrunk due to changing bodies, or hormones, or medication. Perhaps on a different eating schedule. Perhaps they just want a treat for later. It's all okay, and none of it takes anything away from the kindness you're extending. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Death toll from Iranian protests to exceed, to exceed 2,000. Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The death toll from a nationwide protest in Iran surpassed 2,000 people on Tuesday, activists said, as Iranians made phone calls abroad for the first time in days after authorities severed communications during a crackdown on demonstrations. The number of dead climbed to at least 2,003, as reported by the U.S.-based human rights activist news agency. That figure dwarfs the death toll from any other round of protests or unrest in Iran in decades and recalls the chaos surrounding the country's 1979 Islamic Revolution. The Iranian state television offered the first official acknowledgement of the high death toll, quoting an official saying the country had a lot of martyrs and it did not release a toll earlier because of the dead suffering gruesome injuries. However, the statement came only after activists reported their toll. The demonstrations began a little over 2 weeks ago in anger over Iran's ailing economy and soon targeted the theocracy, particularly the 86-year-old Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Images obtained Tuesday by the Associated Press from demonstrations in Tehran showed graffiti and chants calling for Khamenei's death, something that could carry a death sentence. Soon after a new death toll became public, President Trump wrote in his Truth Social platform, "Iranian patriots, keep protesting. Take over your institutions." He added, "I have canceled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way." Trump did not give details. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, speaking to the Qatari-funded satellite news network Al Jazeera in an interview that aired Monday night, said he had continued to communicate with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. But after Trump's message Tuesday, a top Iranian security official, Ali Lajani, responded by writing, "We declare the names of the main killers of the people of Iran. 1. Trump. 2. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu." The activist group said 1,850 of the dead were protesters and 135 were government-affiliated. 9 children were killed, along with 9 civilians. It said were not taking part in protests. More than 16,700 people have been detained, the group said. With the internet down in Iran, gauging the demonstrations from abroad has grown more difficult. The AP has been unable to independently assess the toll. Iran's government has not offered overall casualty figures. Skylar Thompson with the human rights activist news agency told AP the new toll was shocking, particularly since it reached 4 times the death toll of the month-long 2022 Masha Amani protests in just 2 weeks. She warned that the toll would still rise. "We're horrified, but we still think the number is conservative." Speaking by phone for the first time since their calls were cut off from the outside world, Iranian witnesses described a heavy security presence in central Tehran, burned out government buildings, smashed ATMs, and few passers-by. Meanwhile, people remain concerned about what comes next, including the possibility of a U.S. attack. My customers talk about Trump's reaction while wondering if he plans a military strike against the Islamic Republic, said shopkeeper Mohammed, who gave only his first name out of concern for his safety. "I don't expect Trump or any other foreign country cares about the interests of Iranians." Raza, a taxi driver who also gave just his first name, said protests are on many people's minds. People, particularly young ones, are hopeless, but they talk about continuing the protest. Several people in Iran were able to call the AP on Tuesday and speak to a journalist. The AP bureau in Dubai was unable to call those numbers back. Witnesses said text messaging was still down, and internet users in Iran could connect to the government-approved websites locally, but nothing abroad. Anti-riot police officers wore helmets and body armor while carrying batons, shields, shotguns, and tear gas launchers, according to the witnesses. Police stood watch at major intersections. Nearby, witnesses saw members of the Revolutionary Guard's all-volunteer Baseji force, which carries firearms and batons. Security officials in plainclothes were visible in public places. Several banks and government offices were burned during the unrest, witnesses said. Banks struggling to complete financial transactions without the internet, they added. Shops were open, though there was little foot traffic in the capital. Tehran's Grand Bazaar, where the demonstrations began December 28th over the collapse of Iran's real currency, opened Tuesday. However, a witness described speaking to multiple shopkeepers who said security forces ordered them to reopen no matter what. Iranian state media had not acknowledged that order. The witnesses spoke on condition of anonymity for fear of reprisal. It also appeared that security service personnel were searching for Starlink terminals as people in northern Iran reported authorities raiding apartments and buildings with satellite dishes. While satellite television dishes are illegal, many in the capital have them in their homes, and officials broadly had given up enforcing on the law in recent years. On the streets, people also could be seen challenging plainclothes police, security officials who were stopping passersby at random. State television also read a statement about mortuary and morgue services being free, a signal that some likely charge high fees for the release of bodies amid the crackdown. Khomeini, in a statement carried by the state TV, praised the tens of thousands who took part in pro-government demonstrations nationwide Monday. This is a warning to American politicians to stop their deceit and not rely on traitorous mercenaries, he said. The Iranian nation is strong and powerful and aware of the enemy. State TV on Monday aired chants from the crowd, which appeared to number to the tens of thousands of "Death to America, death to Israel." Others cried out, "Death to the enemies of God." Iran's Attorney General has warned that anyone taking part in protests will be considered an enemy of God, a death penalty charge.
Thank you, Larry. Greenland official calls U.S. takeover unfathomable. A senior Greenland government official said Tuesday it's unfathomable that the United States is discussing taking over a NATO ally and urged the Trump administration to listen to voices from the Arctic Islands people. Nida Nathanielsen, Greenland's Minister for Business and Mineral Resources, said people in Greenland are very, very worried over the administration's desire for control of Greenland. She spoke a day before a key meeting in Washington between foreign ministers of the semi-autonomous Danish territory and Denmark and top U.S. officials at a time of increased tensions between the allies over the stepped-up U.S. rhetoric. People are not sleeping, children are afraid, and it just fills everything these days. And we can't really understand it, Nathanielsen said at a meeting with lawmakers at Britain's Parliament. Earlier, the Danish government official confirmed that Denmark provided U.S. forces in the East Atlantic with support last week as they intercepted an oil tanker for alleged violations of U.S. sanctions. The official, who was not authorized to comment publicly on the sensitive matter and spoke on a condition of anonymity, declined to provide details about what the support entailed. The U.S. interception in the Atlantic capped a weeks-long pursuit of the tanker that began in the Caribbean Sea as the U.S. imposed a blockade in the waters of Venezuela aimed at capturing sanctioned vessels coming in and out of the South American country. The White House and Pentagon did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Danish support for the U.S. operation was first reported by Newsmax. Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio will meet with the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland today at the White House to discuss Trump's interest in acquiring Greenland, according to a U.S. official and two sources familiar with the plans who spoke on condition of anonymity because the meeting had not yet been formally announced. Denmark's foreign minister, Lars Løkke Rasmussen, said earlier that Vance would host a meeting with him and his Greenlandic counterpart, Vivian Motzfeldt, in Washington this week, with Rubio in attendance. At a joint news conference with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen in Copenhagen, Greenlandic Prime Minister Jan Frederik Nielsen reiterated that Greenland isn't for sale, Danish media reported. Nielsen said Greenland doesn't want to be owned or ruled by the U.S. Frederiksen also underlined Denmark's willingness to invest in Arctic security. She said it hasn't been easy to stand up to unacceptable pressure from a close ally, and there are many indications that the most difficult part lies ahead. Nathanielsen said of Greenland's people, "We have no intentions of becoming American, but we have worked towards more collaboration with the Americans for many, many years. We feel betrayed. We feel the rhetoric is offensive, but also bewildering." NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte refused to be drawn into the dispute, insisting that it was not his role to get involved. "I never ever comment when there are discussions within the alliance," Rutte said at the European Parliament in Brussels. "My role has been to make sure we solve issues." He said that the 32-nation military organization must focus on providing security in the Arctic region, which includes Greenland. "When it comes to the protection of the High North, that is my role." Tensions have grown this month as Trump and his administration push the issue, and the White House considers a range of options, including military force, to acquire Greenland. Trump reiterated his argument that the U.S. needs to take Greenland, otherwise Russia or China would. in comments aboard Air Force One on Sunday. He said he'd rather make a deal for the territory, but one way or the other, we're going to have Greenland. Nathanielson said Greenlanders understand that the United States sees Greenland as part of its national security sphere. We get it. We want to work with that, she said, adding that we understand the need for increased monitoring in the Arctic as a consequence of the growing geopolitical insecurity. Nathanielson said Greenland understands the need to shake things up, to make things different, but we do believe it can be done without the use of force. She said it was just unfathomable to understand that Greenland should be facing the prospect of being sold or annexed. A bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation is headed to Copenhagen for meetings on Friday and Saturday in an attempt to show unity between the United States and Denmark. Nathanielson said she thinks the people of Greenland have a say in their own future. My deepest dream or hope is that the people of Greenland will get a say no matter what, she said. For others, this might be a piece of land, but for us, it's home. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. EPA to stop figuring healthcare savings. Washington, the Environmental Protection Agency says it will stop calculating how much money is saved in healthcare costs avoided and deaths prevented from air pollution rules that curb two deadly pollutants. The change means the EPA will focus rules for fine particulate matter and ozone only on the cost to industry, part of a broader realignment under President Trump toward a business-friendly approach that has included the rollback of multiple policies meant to safeguard human health and the environment and slow climate change. The agency said in a statement late Monday that it absolutely remains committed to our core mission of protecting human health and the environment, but will not be monetizing the impacts at this time. The EPA will continue to estimate costs to businesses to comply with the rules and will continue ongoing work to refine its economic methodologies of pollution rules, spokeswoman Bridget Hirsch said. Environmental and public health advocates called the agency's action a dangerous abdication of one of its core missions. The EPA's mandate to protect public health, not to ignore the science, in order to eliminate clean air safeguards that save lives, said John Walke, a senior attorney for the National Resources Defense Council. He called the change in how public health benefits are calculated reckless, dangerous, and illegal, adding, by pretending real health benefits do not count, EPA wants to open the door for industry to foul the air, while communities and families pay the price in asthma attacks, heart disease, and premature deaths. The change in how the EPA calculates health benefits was first reported by the New York Times. The move comes as the Trump administration is seeking to abandon a rule that sets tough standards for deadly soot pollution, arguing that the Biden administration did not have authority to set the tighter standards on pollution from tailpipes, smokestacks, and other industrial sources. In a court filing in November, the EPA said the Biden-era rule was done without the rigorous stepwise process that Congress required and was therefore unlawful. The EPA said it continues to recognize the clear and well-documented benefits of reducing fine particulate matter, all known as PM2.5 and ozone. Not monetizing does not equal not considering or not valuing the human health impact, Hirsch said in an emailed statement, saying the agency under Administrator Lee Zeldin remains committed to protecting human health. Since the EPA's creation more than 50 years ago, the Republican and Democratic administrations have used different estimates to assign monetary value to human life cost benefit analysis. Under former President Joe Biden, the EP estimated that its proposed rule on PM2.5 would prevent up to 4,500 premature deaths and 290,000 lost workdays by 2032. For every $1 spent on reducing PM2.5, the agency said there could be as much as $77 in health benefits. But the Trump administration contends these estimates are misleading, failing to include ranges or other qualifying statements. The EPA's use of specific estimate leads the public to believe the agency has a better understanding of the monetized impacts of exposure to PM2.5 and ozone than in reality, the agency said in an economic impact analysis for the new rule, NOx rule. Therefore, To rectify this error, the EPA is no longer monetizing benefits from PM 2.5 and ozone, but will continue to quantify the emissions until the agency is confident enough in the modeling to properly monetize these impacts. But critics said the new EPA rule that revises emission limits for dangerous nitrogen oxide pollution from new gas-burning turbines used in power plants demonstrates the risks of the new approach. Emissions of nitrogen oxide, also known as NOx, form smog and soot that is harmful to human health as it linked to serious heart and lung diseases. EPA's final NOx rule issued Monday is substantially less restrictive than a proposal under the Biden administration. For some gas plants, the rule weakens protections in place for 2 decades. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, January 14, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Style section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have a